House Republicans seem to be more interested in what Donald Trump wants them to do than securing the border or protecting our national security.
Imagine the nightmare if Donald Trump's reelected.
They know Joe Biden can't defeat me. You can look at every one of the polls. I defeat Biden by double digits.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns here in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. After months of closed-door negotiations, Senate leaders have finally unveiled a bipartisan $188 billion border security and foreign aid package. Almost immediately, some Democratic and Republican lawmakers expressed concern over the plan. It's unclear if the bill has the 60 necessary votes to pass the Senate. House Republican leadership, meanwhile, is already calling it, quote, dead on arrival, even if it passes the upper chamber. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez is at the border in Eagle Pass, Texas, and is with us now. Camilo, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here and for all of your reporting. So I know you've looked at this 370-page bill, so our viewers don't have to. Can you walk us through what the major border provisions are in this legislation?
That's right, Caitlin. If signed by the president and passed by Congress, this proposal would mark a dramatic and seismic shift here at the U.S.-Mexico border. Migrants would be quickly returned across the Rio Grande here into Mexico when illegal crossings spike here. The president would gain a sweeping authority, Caitlin, to effectively shut down asylum processing in between the ports of entry, giving authorities here a sweeping power to summarily return migrants when that authority is invoked or triggered by a certain threshold in illegal crossings. We should note, however, that asylum processing, Caitlin, will be preserved at official border crossings. These are the ports of entry that facilitate legal trade and travel. That will continue to be the case. In fact, the government would be mandated to allow at least 1,400 migrants to be processed at those crossings each day when this authority is invoked. This bill would also dramatically speed up the asylum review process that right now takes years to complete. That would try to condense that process into a couple of months. That would be a huge change, Caitlin. And so this bill is garnering criticism from the left and from the right, but the negotiators are saying that this is a compromise that is not perfect because not every side is getting what they want. Obviously, it is very unclear, Caitlin, whether this proposal will be passed in a Congress that has been gridlocked, as you know, on this issue since the 1990s.
Exactly, Camilo. I mean, that's what's so fascinating here. And, lawmakers have spent the past several months working on this, and you've been reporting extensively from the border. You have seen all of this firsthand. So if this bill were to pass, what kind of impact would it have, logistically, fundamentally, on places like you are in Eagle Pass? Would this alleviate some of the issues?
Well, Caitlin, if President Biden was to sign this bill today as we speak, he would almost certainly have the authority to invoke this shutdown authority and power almost immediately. And that is because Border Patrol agents here along the U.S.-Mexico border have been averaging more than 5,000 daily crossings by migrants. And so that threshold would be met almost immediately. And Border Patrol agents here would be allowed to return migrants to Mexico, no questions asked, without allowing them to request asylum, which is currently a requirement under U.S. law. Right now, U.S. asylum law, Caitlin, allows people on U.S. soil to request asylum even if they enter the country illegally. That would change under this authority. And so that is a power that some of these Democrats and Republicans who negotiated this bill believe would allow the president and the administration to reduce overcrowding here and to deter illegal immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, so that's if this passes, which, as you say, is, at least at this point, appears unlikely to say the least. If we stay in kind of this political gridlock that we're in right now, if this issue isn't addressed, what will continue to happen at the border crossings if there isn't a deal reached here?
Well, simply put, Caitlin, border officials here and asylum officers and immigration judges will continue to operate under a system that is outdated, overwhelmed, and understaffed, and that, again, has not received any major update since the 1990s. And so they are operating under a system that does not reflect the realities of today's migration flows, which are extraordinary. Over 2 million migrant apprehensions were recorded in the past fiscal year alone. That also occurred in fiscal year 2022 as well. And so these numbers are unprecedented. And while official U.S. border crossings have dropped this month in January compared to December, officials here are bracing for another crisis level like in December. In December, U.S. officials here processed more than 300,000 migrants, an all-time high, and they are bracing again for those numbers to go back up.
Some difficult stats there, and an issue that both Republicans and Democrats say they want to address. We'll see what they make of this bill as they continue to read it. Camilo, thank you so much for your reporting and your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Caitlin.
All right, let's go now from the border to Capitol Hill, where we found CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland for us there. I know you've been following all of the ins and outs here. This bill dropped yesterday. Lawmakers are starting to digest it. What are you hearing from Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill? I mean, the House Speaker has already said this is dead on arrival.
Yeah, Caitlin, the first 24 hours of this legislation has been an attempt by critics to kneecap it before it can even walk. All of the Republicans in U.S. House leadership issued a joint statement this afternoon saying they will oppose this thing. It's dead on arrival, an indication it wouldn't even get a vote in the U.S. House if somehow it passed the U.S. Senate. Then there's a contingent of Senate Republicans who've opposed this from the jump, and they've said that they, too, will make their opposition clear as the Senate begins its deliberations. In fact, a group of Senate Republicans will have a news conference midday tomorrow to try to whip up opposition to this negotiation. So what you have here is a coalition that is formed in the middle of the U.S. Senate, but with Senate leadership's blessings. The question gets to be, as this week begins, can this coalition get something out that the U.S. House would ever consider? To do that, Caitlin, they need to build momentum, they need to build support, and the first 24 hours have seen just the opposite.
And one of those critics who is trying to kneecap this, Scott, is former President Donald Trump. He's been very vocal against this deal. I want to play a little bit of what he said during a radio interview and get your thoughts on the other side.
Just to correct the record, I did not endorse Senator Langford. I didn't do it. He ran, and I did not endorse him. So I'm sure your person will be happy to hear that. But I think this is a very bad bill for his career. This is lunacy, this bill. And you know what it is? It's a gift to the Democrats.
Okay, so Scott, just some quick fact-checking here. He did, in fact, endorse Senator Langford, the Republican lead on this bill. So just to correct the record there. But this really speaks to the way in which Donald Trump is obviously still influential in Republican Party politics on the Hill. How big of an impact is this having? The idea that for the past couple of weeks now, he's been urging people not to support this.
It sure does have an outsized impact in the U.S. House, especially, Caitlin, where his most ardent supporters control the floor of what can be considered and what can't be. It's one thing to oppose this bill. It's another to have the capacity to block it, which Republicans in the U.S. House do. As for Senator Langford, correct, he was endorsed by Donald Trump in 2022. But that year is important, isn't it? 2022 means Senator Langford is not up again until 2028, perhaps making him the fitting person for this mission, considering the political blowback he's getting inside his own party. But you have to separate the other components of this bill to really unpack where the concern's coming from. Any number of people concerned about the politics of border security, and any number of people with whom we're speaking today, Caitlin, concerned about what happens to Ukraine. $60 billion in this bill is to help Ukraine at a time of war with Russia. We spoke with Hawaii Democrat Brian Schatz about that earlier today.
It is literally life or death for the country of Ukraine, and we have to decide whether, as the indispensable nation, we are going to stand up against the kind of aggression that we've always stood up against. And so we have to do it one more time, united as a country, to stand up for Eastern Europe and stand up for the free world.
A few other threads, Caitlin. I spoke with Tim Kaine, Democratic senator from Virginia, who acknowledges this is all very fragile right now. First possible test votes in the Senate come Wednesday. This bill just got an endorsement from the National Border Patrol Union. That usually is a formative thing to have on immigration reform legislation. We'll see if it moves the needle, but something's going to have to.
All right, Scott McFarland, we will wait and see, but thank you very much for your time and reporting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And President Biden is campaigning in Nevada ahead of tomorrow's Democratic primary. We'll bring you there to one of those key states that won him the presidency in 2020. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. President Biden met with hospitality workers in Las Vegas today ahead of the Nevada Democratic primary, which takes place tomorrow. During a campaign speech there yesterday, he criticized former President Trump, saying it would be, quote, a nightmare if the GOP frontrunner returned to the White House. CBS News campaign reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now from Las Vegas. Great backdrop there, Aaron. Great to see you. I want to play a little bit of what Biden said in his speech last night, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side.
Imagine the nightmare if Donald Trump's reelected. No. By the way, this is the guy who, when he was in France, and they asked him to go to an American cemetery in France from World War II where Americans were buried. You know what he said? He said those folks buried in that cemetery were suckers and losers.
So, Aaron, this seems like Biden is very much in general election mode, criticizing Donald Trump, who he expects to run against in November. It seems here, Aaron, like Biden, we're going to be seeing a lot of this from Biden, kind of reminding voters of what he has said before, what his presidency was like, to an electorate that, hasn't really may not remember. What's your sense of from what you've heard from Biden in Vegas about kind of how he's planning to take on Trump?
Caitlin, good to be with you. What was notable to me was just how often he talked about Trump last night in his remarks. The crowd there in Las Vegas were a lot of union members, kind of the electorate Biden needs here in this battleground state of Nevada. But he went after Trump on the economy, compared him to Herbert Hoover, saying that the two presidents left office with less jobs than when they came in. Biden did not mention how COVID played a role in that. And also went after Trump and the term his MAGA friends and allies on the issue of abortion, noting how there are politicians out there that have called for a national abortion ban and how that is kind of antithetical to the values that a lot of Democrat and moderate voters have, especially in those suburbs. But you're right. He has to kind of remind voters about former President Trump, given that he's not in the White House anymore. He's not always top of mind for voters. But now getting into this general election season, we're going to hear him talk about Trump more in fundraisers and in campaign speeches.
And especially, Aaron, as it appears that this is a competitive race. I mean, there's a new NBC poll out that shows Trump leading Biden by 5 points. I know we're talking in January of 2024. There's still ways to go. But is Biden or are Democrats kind of talking about their concerns that these polls at this point don't look good for the incumbent?
Well, just from talking this morning, I was talking to the president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, kind of the overseer for these really down ballot state house races. And the message that she had, Heather Williams, was for Democrats to kind of ignore the polls, focus on the work, focus on talking about the record and just the alternative of Republicans. But from talking to voters at the Biden event last night in Las Vegas, I did get the sense that there's not a big sense of enthusiasm yet. They came out because they wanted to hear what the former president or what the current president had to say. But some Democratic voters that did vote for him in 2020 said they were still on the fence, maybe looking at options like former President Trump or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So it is going to be the task for Biden in these coming weeks and months until the general election to kind of build that electorate, make sure that they're still for him, especially in a state like Nevada, a crucial battleground state.
Yeah, and speaking of Nevada, I know you were not there for the Super Bowl, although that is also this weekend. This week, Nevada will be hosting both a primary and a caucus for the Republican side. Can you just walk us through very quickly what to be paying attention to?
That's right. I'm a Bears fan, so I'm looking forward to the draft more than the Super Bowl itself. But, the Republicans have this confusion going on. They have a primary and a caucus. The primary Nikki Haley is going to be on that ballot, and this option for none of these candidates is going to be on that ballot. But whoever wins that is not going to get any delegates because the state party said all their delegates will go to the winner of the caucus. And that's where former President Trump has seemed all but locked up. The state party chair is a big Trump ally. So it's really Thursday that we're going to be paying attention to. It'll really only be Donald Trump on that ballot, but we'll see his remarks on that day, how he talks about Nevada, and generally about Nikki Haley, who is still in this race and is planning to be in this race through Super Tuesday.
All right, a lot of activity there this week, not just the Super Bowl. Aaron Navarro, thank you very much for your reporting. We'll talk to you soon. And speaking of Republican politics, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel has long been an ally of Donald Trump, but now the former president is hinting at a change in leadership. His words after the break. You're streaming America Decides. And welcome back to America Decides. As the RNC is reporting its worst fundraising year in almost a decade, former President Donald Trump says it may be time for a change in leadership.
I think she did great when she ran Michigan for me. I think she did okay initially in the RNC. I would say right now there'll probably be some changes made.
More on this. Dave Weigel and Sophia Kai join us now. Dave is national political reporter for Semaphore, and Sophia is national politics reporter at Axios. Great to see you both here. Dave, I want to start with you because just about a week and a half ago after New Hampshire, Ronna McDaniel was telling Republicans to get behind Donald Trump. She was urging Nikki Haley to drop out of the race. What has changed? That would be something that you would think Donald Trump would be supportive of.
Yes, and she hasn't really jumped to react to what Donald Trump said, but she just got out of a party meeting where about a third of RNC members, maybe more, they didn't have a vote. They didn't have a new vote on this. They had one a year ago. Are kind of done with her. And there was a discussion about why fundraising was so poor at the meeting. It was closed press, but some people came out of the meeting and said what happened. There was pressure outside from Turning Point USA, which is Charlie Kirk's organization. Don Jr. was a guest at their little conference. No, I shouldn't say little. It was smaller than the RNC, but it was an alternative event with RNC members. Some of the theme being we should replace the RNC's leadership with somebody more MAGA-centric. And that attitude is very prevalent. It got back to Trump. If he wins the nomination, then he does get to layer over, replace the RNC chair with whatever he does. He just would be doing it with somebody who has been unfailingly loyal, as you said, to him through her entire tenure. Yeah, and you know, it's interesting that loyalty, what I think is underestimated about this campaign is the way in which the Trump campaign has really shored up support at the state party level. One good example of that is Nevada, where he's having the caucus, is going to run away with it there, obviously, since Nikki Haley's not participating in the caucus. But Sophia, you've got some reporting about kind of what the campaign is looking for there. Is there a concern about turnout? Because I am kind of curious if it's already a foregone conclusion that he's running away with it in Nevada. Are they concerned about what those numbers might look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's definitely going to get all of the delegates, but I think the issue here is that it could be potentially very embarrassing if a lot more people turn out in the primary. I mean, already more than 50,000 people have voted early in the primary. And no one has voted for Trump, and that's because Trump is not on the ballot there. There's a none of the above option, which I'm sure there's going to be a lot of votes for. But on the other hand, 2 days later, you've got this caucus that the Nevada GOP, its leaders are very loyal to Trump. They've kind of created this caucus. It's in addition to the primary. And they're really hoping for people to turn out. And so for months, the Trump campaign has been trying to educate voters that if you want to vote for Donald Trump, you have to come out for the caucus. But there's been a lot of confusion. There was some disappointment with their state party director. I mean, this kind of cuts against this notion that the Trump campaign is a really well-oiled, professional campaign with no glitches. I mean, there was some drama there. There was some recognition that, they didn't have caucus sites ready. They only have one full-time paid staffer. This is the Nevada GOP. I mean, under the surface, there is some concern about turnout and organization when it comes to the Nevada caucus.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially since they made this so. I mean, it is interesting to me, Dave, that, we're all sitting here in the middle of a campaign season. Typically, we would kind of be on the road covering every inch of this. We kind of know what's going to happen. He's still going to get those delegates in Nevada. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley is still in this race, insisting that she's going, has the money. We were on a campaign call today with a campaign chair saying they have the money to do it. She raised $16.5 million in January. They say that's her biggest monthly haul yet. The math, though, still doesn't seem to add up. What's the case that Haley is making, according to her campaign?
Not really. I think we're all on the call, and if you had to go from that call and just consult your notes and say, how do they win the nomination, it's still not clear. Because they are going to take this loss in Nevada, which they baked into it. They called it, again, on a rigged primary in the call. They're going to South Carolina, which they will not say they can win. They're very proud of not setting a benchmark, but we can brainstorm. What's the last candidate who lost their home state primary and became the nominee? Nobody. Right. And after that, they will refer to how many states have semi-open primaries, independents who can vote. South Carolina is semi-open. There's not party registration. So this will be another proof. In a place where people know her, do they show up with the ability, to former Democrat or independent, with the ability to vote for her? Do they bother? They're not even saying they will. So yeah, they talk through Super Tuesday, but it is hard to find a state on this map. They mentioned Michigan too. Michigan, they didn't say they could win there, even though it's an open primary with a lot of votes going to the convention. So they will accurately say these primary rules have been changed for Donald Trump to benefit him, but they can't point to a place where she is such a powerful message that she can win.
Right, and the rules are the rules. You have to get delegates in order to win the nomination. I do want to play, Sophia, a little bit of what she said during a gaggle today, and this kind of goes to her main campaign theme.
They know Joe Biden can't defeat me. You can look at every one of the polls. I defeat Biden by double digits. And so it's no surprise that the Democrat Party's focusing on getting me out. They're working with Trump to do it. I'm going to continue, and we're going to work hard and we're going to close that gap.
So Haley's message has been that she is the most electable. She says that she beats Biden by more than her rivals do. Now she's the only rival to Donald Trump. How much of that is working with voters? I mean, just judging from the results we've had so far, it doesn't seem like that has been a pitch that's resonating.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, Dave has mentioned open primaries. At the end of the day, if you want to win a Republican primary, you need Republican votes. And Nikki Haley's issue is that she's been towing this very fine line with Donald Trump. She's been saying she needs Democrats and independents, but Republican voters are still supporting Trump. And that's why when you come and look at the math, she doesn't have the delegate counts to get there. And I think right now she's still hanging in there. She needs to, make this case to donors who have donated to her right after New Hampshire. She can't just drop out. She has to hang in there. She's still making this case that she's appealing to the 70% of Americans who don't want another Biden and Trump matchup. That is all true. But I think, Nikki Haley's path is still pretty narrow.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the donors. I mean, that also seems, we know why people fold campaigns for a variety of reasons. One of them is that they run out of money. It doesn't appear, at this point, Dave, that she is anywhere close to that. I mean, her campaign keeps saying they have enough money to go the distance. But at what point does that start to maybe dry up, or the pressure starts to build? Or is there this kind of thought process that, look, Trump is still facing lots of criminal indictments. He's in court a lot. Maybe there's a contingent that wants to just see her stay through.
Yeah, you said it with that last point, that Trump is in an unprecedented amount of legal trouble for a likely nominee. DeSantis has also suspended his campaign. Anyone could, if something were to happen that Republicans don't say will not happen, then and he was not the nominee. There are several Republicans who have a claim to that. But different races, but I'm thinking a little bit of what happened to Bernie Sanders in 2020. He had the money. He had tons of resources to keep that primary going if he wanted to. He folded it, partly because of COVID, partly because he wanted to have influence, which he did, in the Biden administration. Haley doesn't have that down that pot of gold at the end of her rainbow. She does not have the ability to lose Donald Trump and look at Ronna McDaniel. The most you can do is be on his side for a couple months and then get junked. Yeah. So it's a tough position she's in if she wants to be influential, unless something happens to Trump. That's every sentence kind of ends with, unless something happens to Trump before the convention. Yeah,
the biggest kind of question mark out there, but certainly not on his VP shortlist, given what they've said to each other. Both of you, thank you, Dave and Sophia. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you back out on the trail soon, hopefully. And that does it for us today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.